Cannabis Common Sense, the show that tells the truth about marijuana and the politics behind its prohibition.
Cannabis Common Sense, good to have you back this week. We have a great show for you tonight. Right here next to me is Darlene Mia with a new publication called Hempington Post. We'll be talking with her. Over in the number 2 seat is Mr. Casper Leach. And then we have a special band in tonight. It's Weekend Assembly. Thanks for coming in, guys. We'll have them back here in just a minute after we have our hemp news. We got an interesting hemp news segment tonight. Some videos and more. So stay tuned as we bring on our infamous dancing cannabis leaves.
I feel the force. Our first story tonight is from our nation's capital, Washington, D.C. Representative Tulsi Gabbard of Hawaii and Representative Tom Garrett of Virginia held a press conference on Wednesday urging Congress to pass H.R. 1227, Ending Federal Marijuana Prohibition Act of 2017. The legislators are renewing their efforts as the Trump administration pushes to go after nonviolent drug crimes. The bill currently has 11 sponsors. The bipartisan bill, if approved, would remove cannabis from the federal government's list of controlled substances and put cannabis in the same category as alcohol and tobacco. Representative Gabbard of Hawaii said, quote, "Our archaic federal laws relating to marijuana are hurting people, tearing families apart, turning everyday Americans into criminals, and negatively impacting our economy, all at a tremendous cost to taxpayers as billions are spent on an overburdened and broken criminal justice system. The question before us is not whether you think marijuana use is good or bad or how you feel about the issue, but whether we should be turning people into criminals," end quote, Representative Gabbard stated. She went on, quote, "Every 42 seconds someone's arrested for the use or possession of marijuana, turning everyday Americans into criminals, tearing families apart," Representative Gabbard told reporters. Mr. Garrett, a former prosecutor, told attendees at a previous gig pursuing criminals as Virginia's Assistant Attorney General gave him a better insight into the failed drug war. He said, quote, "My background on this issue is shaped by my own experiences as a criminal prosecutor, where in fact I did enforce the laws of the Commonwealth of Virginia as they relate to marijuana, and some would say did so quite vigorously." Garrett went on, quote, "I've long believed justice that isn't blind isn't justice. Statistics indicate that minor narcotics crimes disproportionately hurt areas of lower socioeconomic status. What I find most troubling is that we continue to keep laws on the books that we do not enforce," end quote, Mr. Garrett said. A growing number of states have passed voter initiatives in recent years allowing medical and social marijuana. 9 states and the nation's capital, Washington, D.C., ironically, have passed laws legalizing recreational cannabis since 2012. More than half the states have medical marijuana laws. According to the American Civil Liberties Union, about 8.2 million people were arrested on marijuana-related charges between 2001 and 2010. Roughly 88% of those arrests were for possession, the ACLU confirmed. So we urge you to contact your elected officials and ask them to support the U.S. Congress's H.R. 1227. Just a couple days ago, on May 17th, singer-songwriter Willie Nelson had some advice for U.S. Attorney Jeff Sessions, who said marijuana is only slightly less awful than heroin. Sessions also said in the past that good people don't smoke marijuana. As the nation's top law enforcement officers, he signaled a broad crackdown against both social and medicinal uses of cannabis, which remains illegal federally. Willie Nelson, a longtime advocate for cannabis, in an interview with Rolling Stone said, quote, "I wonder if he's tried both of them. I don't think you can really make a statement like that unless you've tried it all. So I suggest to Jeff Sessions to try it, and then let me know later if he still thinks he's telling the truth, end quote. Willie Nelson has its own brand of marijuana, Willie's Reserve, which is available in Colorado and Washington, soon here in Hawaii. His wife Annie runs the edible side business. Willie said, quote, she's a great chef, and she's been working in Colorado and all those places where it's legal, he added. Nelson was asked if there's a downside to personal cannabis use. He said, quote, I haven't run into any yet. I guess if you go somewhere where it's illegal, that's a pretty good downside, end quote. In 2012, Nelson endorsed Oregon's Measure 80, the Oregon Cannabis Tax Act that I sponsored and wrote. The Cannabis Policy Initiative was defeated but received 47% of the vote in 2012. In 2014, Oregon activists regrouped and passed Measure 91 with 55% of the vote. Nelson's 61st studio album just came out last week. It's called God's Problem Child. It's released. The album features the song Still Not Dead, and it topped the Billboard country music charts earlier this month. This summer, Nelson will tour with the Outlaw Music Festival, which includes dates with Bob Dylan, Sheryl Crow, Jason Isbell, and Nelson's sons, Lucas and Micah. Over in the Middle East, new medical marijuana rules in Israel will allow patients to consume cannabis as an oil or vapor in public and will reduce the wait times for patients to receive authorization to use and possess medical marijuana, according to a report from Jerusalem Online Israeli Health Minister Yaakov Litzman. Israel is a leader in the national marijuana policy reform, having decriminalized marijuana use in March. Non-medical users caught smoking cannabis in public are now subject to a $271 fine for the first offense, and the fine is doubled on the second. A third offense leads to probation, and criminal charges are imposed only on the fourth offense. MK Tamar Zandberg, chairman of the Knesset Special Committee on Drug and Alcohol Abuse, said the policy, quote, sends a message that 1 million of Israelis who consume marijuana aren't criminals, end quote. The Agriculture and Health Ministries of Israel plan to provide about $2.1 million in funding for 13 medical cannabis studies that will range from biochemical and medical research to improving crop yields. The Multidisciplinary Center for Cannabinoid Research was launched last month at Hebrew University of Jerusalem. It'll coordinate and conduct research on the marijuana's biological effects in an effort to determine potential commercial applications. Out of Emeryville, California, public support for marijuana legalization has surged in Washington state in the years following the enactment of legislation permitting commercial production and retail sale of the plant, according to survey data published in the journal Drug and Alcohol Dependence. 55% of voters approved the voter initiative measure in Washington state in 2012. Investigators with the Public Health Institute in California assessed survey data from a geographically representative sample of those 18 and older in Washington. The survey data was collected every 6 months between January 2014 and April 2016 in order to assess support trends over time. The authors reported that respondent support for legalization increased from 64% to 78% over this time period. Public support grew among those in every age group. National polls similarly show an increase in public support for marijuana legalization following the enactment of such laws in various states. The study, Support for Marijuana Legalization in the U.S. state of Washington, has continued to increase through 2016, appears in Drug and Alcohol Dependence. Also up in Washington state, adults often substitute cannabis for the use of prescription medications, according to data published in the Journal of Pain Research. Investigators at Bastyr University Research Institute assessed the frequency of drug substitution among a self-selected national sample of 2,774 self-identified marijuana consumers. Just under half of the respondents, 46%, reported using cannabis in place of prescription medications. Respondents were most likely to use cannabis in lieu of narcotic opioids, about 36%, and benzodiazepines at about 14%, and antidepressants at about 13%. Women were more likely than men to report drug substitutions, as were older respondents. Those who identified as medical cannabis patients were more than 4 times as likely as non-medical users to report engaging in drug substitution. According to the study, quote, These data contribute to a growing body of literature suggesting cannabis, legal or otherwise, is being used as a substitute for prescription drugs, particularly prescription pain relievers, end quote, the authors concluded. The study's conclusions are similar to those of several others and reduced prescription drug use and spending by those with access to cannabis. This study, Cannabis as a Substitute for Prescription Drugs, a cross-sectional study, appears in this month's edition of the Journal of Pain Research. In Vermont, today, Senate Bill 22, a bill to legalize cannabis in Vermont for adults over 21, landed on Republican Governor Phil Scott's desk, potentially making Vermont the first state in the country to legalize marijuana through the legislative process and not the ballot initiative. The bill has already been approved by both chambers of the state legislature. Now the governor has 5 days to decide whether to sign or veto it. But even if he does neither on Wednesday, May 24th, next week, it would automatically become law. It only wouldn't become law if he vetoes it. If passed, the measure would legalize possession of up to an ounce of cannabis, 2 mature cannabis plants, and 4 immature plants beginning in July 2018. It would also create a study commission effective immediately to look at cannabis tax and regulate models in other states and make recommendations for the adult use market in Vermont. It's unclear at this time whether Vermont would adopt a regulated market or simply allow citizens to grow and share cannabis with their friends. Our last story tonight is from Minnesota. Based on patient surveys and other data, a significant number of patients who used medical cannabis during the first year of Minnesota's marijuana program reported benefits, according to the Minnesota Department of Health. Less than a quarter of the patients who participated in the study experienced negative side effects from cannabis. The Minnesota Department of Health study draws on data from survey results as well as an enrollment, purchasing, and related health information to describe the experience of patients using medical cannabis from the program's start on July 1st, 2015 through June 30th of 2016. The Department of Health said, quote, based on this evidence from the first year, Minnesota's approach is providing many people with substantial benefits, minimal side effects, and no serious adverse events, end quote, said Minnesota's Health Commissioner, Dr. Ed Ellinger. In a statement from the Minnesota Department of Health, went on, quote, patients responded to a survey question asking how much benefit they believe they receive from using medical cannabis on a scale from 1 of no benefit to 7, a great deal of benefit. Across all patients, 64% indicated a benefit rating of 6 or 7. That is the end of our Hemp News segment tonight. We're now going to get a great band in here tonight. I want to thank you guys for coming in. It's Weekend Assembly.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Time and time again, you try reading paper in the wind. Shouldn't have built my house up on the hill. I'm so high the wind just never stands still. Sunday morning creeping like a nun. Some things in this life will never get done. Maybe a diamond's just a stone. Sometimes dying is the only way home. Good morning to my one and only sweet baby. Good morning today. from the same well that we drank. So do your dishes, don't put them in the sink. Life, there is no joy without some pain. Cars are moving faster in the other lane. Hope that we're all friends for many years. Give me all my lies and my fears. So good morning, one and only sweet baby. So good morning today. So good morning, one and only sweet baby. So good morning today.
Right.
Thank you so much.
What's the name of that tune?
It's called Good Morning.
All right. Thank you. Weekend Assembly. You'll be back with about 6 minutes toward the end of the show. I want to thank you guys for watching. Unfortunately, as it says there on the screen, our phone lines are down, so we won't be taking viewers' phone calls tonight, though we do have a microphone in our studio for audience members who might want to ask a question.
Give your personal number out.
Here, how you doing? You know, and how are you, Darlene?
Very good.
Welcome to the
Nice
show.
to
Now,
be here.
Darlene, you have a publication called Hempington Post.
Yes.
Catchy name.
Thank you very much.
So tell us about Hempington Post.
Okay, well, actually, we're an online media portal for all things hemp.
We know about things like that.
All things hemp, yes.
We're you know, brother sister organizations here, so it's
Yes,
good to have you on.
Thank you very much.
How long have you been doing this?
I've been in the hemp industry for almost 4 years. Yes.
And when did you start doing the Hempington Post?
I was
posts?
actually publishing a magazine. I think you know Bruce Perlewin.
Yeah, I do.
Yes,
down
yes.
in North Carolina now.
Yes, he is. Yes.
He lived
So
here. He had some history here in Oregon too.
Hi, Bruce.
he had history everywhere, didn't he?
yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So I did a magazine there with Hemp Inc. for a couple of years called Hemp Nation. Started Hempington Post the first of the year. I just feel that it's a major mission that education needs to happen.
That's what
So
we're
I'm
about.
that
That's
girl.
what our hemp flame of
Yes.
freedom is about right here. This is our little hemp lamp. We show it here to show, you know, I believe that's the main reason marijuana is illegal, is because its potential as a biofuel.
You think
You know,
so? Yes.
pretty sure, pretty sure about that. It was, as our late great friend Gatewood Galbraith used to say, and our guests are used to hearing me say since he passed away 5 years ago, it was the petrochemical, pharmaceutical, military, industrial, transnational, corporate, elite, fascist sons of a bitches that gave us marijuana prohibition so they wouldn't have to compete with hemp as a biofuel source.
Absolutely, and that's
It's-
all one word, and that's absolutely true.
Well, you gotta toss
Yeah.
that into the end.
He does that pretty well here. At a
You did
few-
it for all of us. Thank you very much.
few places.
Yeah, yeah. Well, now we're in a time period where we need to change. People, we right. The bill was signed back in 2014. Yes.
The
and
federal hemp exemption
yes, yes.
studies.
And so now, right. So now we're studying something that has been available for 12,000 years already.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, that's true.
I'm not sure why
More
we're
than
studying.
12,000.
Yes. Well, since the beginning of time. In the beginning of time,
Yeah.
there was the plant, right? So
Yeah.
now we're doing research because of all the big industry. Correct.
Yeah, I know some
Not
people that
good.
are growing
30,000 acres in Kentucky.
Nice.
Yeah, they're doing most of that for seed oil, but some for CBD, about a tenth of it for CBD.
Well, the thing is that it's industry.
Yeah.
Paul. That's what we need. We need made in America, industrial products made here. Yes,
And
instead
we
of
need,
in.
you know, the thing about hemp, especially as a fuel resource, is instead of taking carbon deposits out of the earth that are toxic and laced with toxic metals and materials, and pumping all this carbon into the atmosphere, hemp would be a naturally balanced, and the residual protein for pressing the oil out of the seeds would feed the world, and the residual fiber from harvesting those plants would stop deforestation. It just would solve so many problems in one thing. And it's really an issue about money and power and the continued centralization of economic and political control. So, you know, we've been doing this show here for 21 years, and it's live here
Thank
tonight
you.
on Cable Access. You're welcome.
We appreciate it.
And we are, unfortunately, our phone lines are down tonight, but we are streaming now tonight for the first time on Facebook as well.
Seriously?
So we're on Facebook and Ustream. We've been doing Ustream's live streaming for about 7 or 8 years, but we have on one of our Facebook pages alone, it's the Restore Hemp one, facebook.com/Restore Hemp. We have over 700,000 followers. So this program, for the very first time tonight, is streaming live on Facebook.
Well, that's cool. And I began streaming on Facebook this week as well.
It's a small world.
It is on the Time for Hemp live page. So, and you can find our archives in there. I've been putting up the Willie Nelson interview and the Jack Hare interview, and then I'm taking content from our host on the network, and I'm putting people like old Judge James Gray and Chris Conrad and Terry Joyce onto the Facebook pages as well. And we're going to be mixing together live video, and we're going to be mixing together videos from the past and videos from our sponsors and videos from our guests. And over a short period of time, we will have quite a library of content about the need to end cannabis prohibition. Find us on Time for Hemp Live Facebook page. Thank you, Paul, for letting me do a shameless plug.
Always, Casper, always. Why don't you do a shameless plug? Where would people find out about Hempington Post on
Well,
Facebook
we're
and
also
other-
going live the 1st of June.
Uh-huh.
And so Hempington Post is hempingtonpost.com. We're on all the social media. And we're going to be interviewing people like Doug Fine or Ryan Laughlin. So people, Zev, right? People, the national hemp industry.
And you put together
Vote
this
Hemp.
cool graphic
Yeah.
for us. Thank you very much.
Something. I wanted everyone to know that I'm so excited about being here because
It's
you have
great
been
to have
such
you
a
here.
major in the industry. And we really need that. We need the forerunners. So which is why I guess now on Facebook we can all go live. What a beautiful thing, yes?
That's true. That's true.
Well,
They were
it's
just trying-
necessary because right now YouTube and Facebook are competing with each other. And so if you put a YouTube video out and then post it on Facebook, Facebook will do what they can to get it ignored, not get followers. But if you put a Facebook image up there or a Facebook video on Facebook, it's the very same thing as you have on YouTube. Then all of a sudden you start getting hits. I posted the Willie Nelson interview on Facebook last night about 1 in the morning. And by 2 o'clock today, we had a little over 1,500 hits.
Nice.
Whereas I'd had it on YouTube for almost 3 years, and I got like 9 hits there. And on top of that, YouTube is doing what they can to get the activists silent, where you got to be like still Disney, CNN, and have a big bankroll, or your algorithms will bury you. And there's a lot of hardworking activists and organizations that are trying to get their message out, not just the people in the marijuana cannabis movement, but there are people in a lot of other movements that are trying to be heard. And the big business is now suppressing people on YouTube. So in order to be heard and find an audience and get your message out, a lot of people are now migrating to Facebook. So yeah, it is becoming quite a popular platform. It forced me to finally do that last week, and I'm glad I did. And all of a sudden, we're getting a brand new audience, and we're getting the message out, and that's what it's all about.
Absolutely. And there's Instagram.
So you know Jack Hare. You know about his
Yes,
book
absolutely.
and everything.
I know Jeannie out in Las Vegas area.
Me too.
Yes.
Me too. So I first met Jack back in 1982 in Los Angeles. I went down there and I was an Evergreen State College student, and we were both contacts in the Yippie magazine Overthrow.
Yippie.
And I stayed for about a month in his partner, Captain Ed's head shop, and registered voters for Tom Hayden at the Santa Monica DMV. But just before I left LA, Ed Adair, Jack's partner, Ed owned a shop called Heads and Highs on Van Nuys Boulevard. He says, you got to meet my partner before you leave town. So I went about a mile down Van Nuys and went to High Country, which was Jack Hare's head shop. And I met him there in '82. And then 2 years later, we both moved here to Oregon to work on marijuana legalization.
Wow.
And then in '85, he started putting together his book, The Emperor Wears No Clothes. It first been an article in the Yippie magazine called Overthrow. And so in that age, which we're talking '85, no one had a computer, a personal computer, and cut and paste meant scissors and glue.
Yeah, I was
and
there.
so Jack had 3 little kids at the time that were like 3 to 6, and he couldn't have stacks of paper and pictures all over his house. So he asked if he could come over to my house, about 2 blocks away, and put together the first edition of The Emperor Wears No Clothes.
Wow.
And so little did I know it would become legendary,
Right.
but and I'm in the dedication of each and every edition of The Emperor Wears No Clothes, and I worked with him. He lived here in Oregon. Then he actually gave his last speech at our Portland Hempstock Festival in September of 2009, and 5 minutes after he left the stage, he had a massive heart attack and passed away a few months later from complications with that. But Casper here worked with him in the early '90s in Los Angeles, and Jack got Casper to start making videos and doing a cable show in Los Angeles. And here is a video of Jack Herer in 1992, before he had any strokes or anything, talking about his organization, Help End Marijuana Prohibition. We'll be right back after this video.
Hi, my name is Jack Herer from an organization called HEMP, and which is Help Eliminate or End Marijuana Prohibition. We're going to show you a movie called Hemp for Victory that was made by the United States Department of Agriculture in 1942 for encouraging the war effort to grow 350,000 acres of cannabis, of hemp, of marijuana, cannabis sativa, each year for the next 3 years for the war. More than they had grown in the preceding 50 years in the United States combined, mostly importing their hemp from the Far East and Russia. While this movie is on, you may not realize that hemp was the most important product in America and in the world for thousands of years. All commerce was carried by hempen sails. Indeed, the word canvas, as you'll see in the movie, comes from the Arabic word and the Dutch word for hemp, which is canvas. Canvas is a Dutch pronunciation of cannabis. The movie you're about to see, for the last 20 years, the United States government says that no such movie was ever made by any department of the United States government. That we know that from at least 1981 on, that reporters for magazines, newspapers have been told, and you'll see actual letters denying that this movie was ever made by any department of the United States Department of Agriculture or by any department of the government. Carl Packard, Maria Farrow, and myself, Jack Herer, after going all through the U.S. Department of Agriculture library at Beltsville, Maryland in the April and May of 1989, went to the Library of Congress, Motion Pictures and Film Strips, to see if we could find any documentation that this movie, that the newspapers were telling me that they couldn't run as being affirmed by the government, that the government said that they'd never made this movie that I was showing to television reporters. And there were other people, activists all over the country, who were showing this movie and were being told that this movie was never made by the United States government. Carl, Marie, and I went into the Library of Congress.
Okay, Casper.
Primary topic.
Wow.
We're back.
We're back.
So that was Jack Herer from back in 1991, Casper tells me. He recorded that way back when. And so you were just telling her or something. You want to repeat that for
because of Jack
the great
Herer,
audience?
Jack Herer and Captain Ed and Dr. Todd McCurria and Chris Conrad and Lynn and Judy Osborne, a whole bunch of
The
other
whole
people.
California, LA.
Yeah, they were working on the
people.
California Hemp Initiative, and we were beating our brains out trying to figure out how can we compete against the Partnership for a Drug-Free America to get our message out. They had this great campaign, this is your brain on drugs. They had the money for the special effects. And I pointed out to Jack, I said, hey, you know, if we started using community cable access, anything that's broadcast through it becomes public domain, and we can like do interviews with you and Chris Conrad, Dr. Todd McCorea, and you can get your sound bites out, and we can use the video for the TV, and we can use the audio for the radio. And Jack suggested I get down there right away and start the show, and I started Time for Hemp because of that, and by accident. It was the first television series in broadcast history to focus on cannabis as its primary topic in a
But it was a cable show.
Still,
So that's not really broadcast.
broadcast.
Broadcast means
Well, let
you're
me
like
fi- if
going
you let
out.
me-
On,
if
look,
you-
there you are.
If you'll let me finish my little list here, I can get through the whole thing. Thank you. I'm proud of this. I'm very proud of it. So it was the first television series in broadcast history about hemp, the first community cable access show to go into 19 states, 21 cities for its debut. It was the first community cable access show to go national. And because of Chris Conrad and the people up in Canada and Mark Emery and Chris Bennett, it became the first television community cable access show to go international. Nice. And so I want to thank those people. And then I got Willie Nelson on as a guest, and Dr. Timothy Leary. And,
Wow.
and through it, I was also the first filmed activist smoking a legal marijuana joint at a government study under Dr. Taskin. So a lot of history was made through Time for Hemp. All because Jack Harris said, go down there to the studio and start the show.
Nice.
So by happen chance, I got a lot of first in the hemp movement, but it's only because of Jack Hare encouraging me to do the things that we needed to do.
Very nice.
That's what I was sharing. Thank you very much.
Very nice.
Thank you very much.
Nice history.
So, Darlene,
Yes.
so tell us what you've done down in North Carolina with Bruce Perlowin and the hemp.net. Tell us more stories.
Tell you more stories. Well, actually, we were in North Carolina. The plant is in North Carolina. We were based in Las Vegas.
Uh-huh.
So when the plant really started moving, then Bruce moved off there, and my end closed. But what I would love to talk about is solutions. I'd like to, I was
All right.
really excited about coming here to see you because you've been in the industry so long, and it seems like this push against big business. And I'm looking for answers at this point,
And
Paul.
as you can
we can
see-
keep educating, but we need solutions as we're educating,
Right. Well, we're working
What
on
do
it.
you know?
Legalizing it is the first step. I think getting to the end, we'll have hemp buildings and hemp towels and hemp clothes again. The first fabric was made from hemp. We could go on about that, but until we can use hemp as a fuel, it's not really been restored. And that's the goal here. And I've got to tell people that, there's this low THC hemp out there, less than 0.3%. And that is really a subterfuge because it only produces about 1/20th as much seeds as high THC cannabis. Difference is about 600 pounds per acre compared to 8,000 pounds of seeds per acre. And that makes at 8,000 pounds of seeds per acre, you're getting 20 times more fuel, 20 times more output, 20 times more protein,
Out of
and
hemp.
twice as much fiber.
Yes.
Yeah. And we've got to stop judging industrial hemp for seed and fiber by its THC content and start judging it by its seed productivity and its fiber productivity. And that should be the basis of cannabis legalization. When we can do that, we'll change the whole world economy.
I also think 3D printing will be a big aspect to the hemp industry because there are so many 3D products that can be printed now and so many different types of 3D printers. You're able to print a house, a car, a gun, food with 3D printers. So you're able to print an ear. something that you can use in a child's throat to save their life. And they're going to need filament to run all those 3D printers. And in order to maintain the supply and demand chain, to keep up with it, you're going to need to be able to refill those printers expeditiously. And about the only way you're going to be able to do that is to grow a crop that grows as quickly and expeditiously as hemp, and can also produce all those different products and all those different levels. So I do believe that the 3D printed industry will be a way of helping to revolutionize the industrial hemp movement as well.
Right. But don't you think that like all of these things are available at this point? However, we still have big business that we're fighting. I mean, no matter how many ways that we can do this.
I'm fighting big business, as many of our viewers know. You know, I've been ranting about the petrochemical, pharmaceutical, military, industrial, transnational, corporate, elite, fascist sons of a bitches, and now they've come after me. They did it. It was subterfuge at first, but now an Israeli oil company, AdiraEnergy.com, just look them up, AdiraEnergy.com, has come in and tried to steal everything I've done in my life, including this television show, including a house that our nonprofit had, including everything I've done in my life. So
and you need to keep in mind too that most of the farms today now are owned by corporations. There used to be a time when farms were owned privately or by families, and it was pointed out to me by Willie Nelson just 20 years ago, blew my mind, that at that time 85%, and it's gotten bigger now, of all the farms in America were corporately owned. So if you want to be able to fight big business, you got to start with having your own farm, and it's
there's
a little
couple
difficult
of big
to do now.
8-pound plants there, 8 pounds each, right between two plants. But I just want to say, do not go to Empower Healthcare at 18th Avenue. They've been taken over by some Canadian thieves and an Israeli oil company. So do not go to my old business at 105 Southeast 18th Avenue. If you need more information about that, you can call us at 503-235-4606. That's 503-235-4606.
And you were talking about Bruce Perlin?
Bruce Perlin.
Bruce Perlin was the very first paid advertiser on my Time for Hemp podcast.
I'll bet he
When was that?
Let's see, 2009, when I was on American Freedom Radio. He heard the broadcast, fell in love with it, came to the website, fell in love with it, and called me up and wanted to know how much I charged to advertise. And I said, nobody's ever, what? You want to advertise? And he went, yeah. I said, well, I'll just promote you for free. He said, I can't do that. I said, I'll call you tomorrow and you give me a price. And if it's high enough, I'll pay it. So I called, he called, and I said, oh, how about $20 a minute? And he went, that's not high enough. I'll call you tomorrow.
Nice.
Yeah, he wasn't going to rip me off either. He paid a fair price. So because of Bruce Perlman, I began giving advertisers and sponsors for the Time for Hemp Global Broadcasting series, which led into the Global Broadcasting
And now
Network.
sometimes you can pay your rent.
Once in a great while.
So
You need to get him to advertise again.
one of
There you
the first people to start writing about marijuana cultivation techniques is a fellow from right here in River City, Jorge Cervantes. I first picked up his book back in 1984, Marijuana Horticulture. And he's out with a new cannabis encyclopedia that I highly recommend. And he makes videos, and we have a video where he goes to phytobioscience and talks about genetic mapping of cannabis. This is a 2-part video. Here's the first part. We'll be back next week with the second part, but here's Jorge.
Hi, I'm Jorge Cervantes, and here I am at Phylos Bioscience. This place is great. It's like the top lab, the top lab you can imagine for cannabis. They do everything with genetics. I mean, it's unbelievable. You guys are going to love this video. And I'm here with Nishan, one of the two principals here. Hey, Nishan, how you doing?
Good. Yourself?
Really good. Hey, I want to say thanks for the white coat, because you got to keep everything clean in here, you know? It's a good deal. Well, tell me, what happens when, say I've got a plant and I want to know if it's male or female, or I want to know what the genetic background is, like the whole DNA workup on it. I can come here and find out. So let's see how you do that. We're just going to walk you through the process in a few videos, and you can learn just what they do here. But the deal is here is so much different because you know exactly what the genetic makeup of your plant is. There's no guessing. Nobody can pull your leg. You can keep it consistent. There's got a lot more benefits than you can imagine. So Nishan, what happens here when you have a sample and you want to send it in? Because I'll tell you, one of the big problems is, you're putting dope in the mail is a dumb idea, right?
Yes.
It's not a good idea.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So we have a kit that we sell online or through resellers. And you can see the resellers on our website, or you can register online for yourself. And what this kit does is it allows you to prepare a sample, has everything you need in it to prepare a sample to send it legally through the mail.
Okay.
What it has is a 5 mil tube that you put a piece of stem in, 1 gram or a couple inches long, maybe 3 inches long. You put isopropanol in it. There's some pipettes to add.
Isopropanol, that's just plain
rubbing alcohol.
Rubbing alcohol. So it's very, very simple stuff you've got at home.
And you put it in. You put in a couple of mils in there, and you shake the stem and the isopropanol for about 30 seconds, and then remove the isopropanol and do it again. Do a total of 3 times.
Mm-hmm. And what does that do?
Well, so the Controlled Substances Act says that that marijuana is defined as X, Y, and Z, except for mature stalk or mature stalk, seed cake, and fiber. And so we're taking the mature stalk, and then we're looking at the DEA, and the DEA says the controlled substance is cannabinoids. So the isopropanol is removing all cannabinoids. So you now have a cannabinoidless stem that complies with both the DEA and Congress's Controlled Substances Act.
Oh, excellent. So you can put it in U.S. mail.
Yep.
And so I see you have a little envelope here. That's how you keep these once they get here?
So it comes with a envelope that you put in this return business mail. This one goes inside, but you prep the stem into something like this. This is a sample that we just received. Here's
Mystery Haze. That's a great name.
Yep. Green Bodie sent this in, and here's some stem.
There's the sample. Okay.
That he sent in.
And that's all that's sent in. And you're able to get the DNA off of that?
We extract the DNA, and we have a little extra in case there's any issues. And we extract the DNA, and it runs through our laboratory pipeline. It's extracted, and then it goes into our cloud pipeline and gets processed and gets placed on the Galaxy.
Oh, wow, that sounds pretty cool. Let's go through each step of that. Whoa, look at this. I see you've got a few of these tests here.
This is the plant sex test. We've got a bunch of other genotype kits. So this is the colorful one is the genotype kit.
Okay, that's the one with the red on it, and this is the sex test.
Yep, these ones are 100 plant sex test.
Okay, cool. Well, let's look at that in another video.
Perfect.
Because there's so much information you guys are going to see. Well, I'll tell you what, I might even break this up down into a few videos. So we're going to make another video now, we're going to cut it off now, and then we're going to move on to the next step. So stay tuned for video number 2 at Philo's Bioscience.
Okay.
And help to
so we're
advertise
back. You can restart your conversation in just a moment. I'd like to just kind of announce, this is our first night to stream on Facebook, and I am told that we have 1,200 viewers on Facebook right now. Not bad for a first night. Tune in again next week. People are watching from Colorado and Massachusetts, and a question is, when is a good time to put plants outside? Well, you know what? We just reached that good time. About the middle of May is the perfect time to put your plants outside. If you started them inside, that's the perfect time. Now is the time. And what you want is about more than 14 hours of daylight. Otherwise, the plants might start flowering. And so we now have that in most latitudes across the United States. So if you're putting out clones, now is a good time. If you're putting out seeds, you could put them out a month or 6 weeks earlier. But anyway, that is the question. I understand a lot of people like to see the Jack Hare video. We'll have more of that. And you can watch the whole thing on Time for Him anytime out there tonight. So you wanted to talk about hemp and marijuana and how they're different. It's all cannabis, but somehow they've been split up.
Well, they were split up, and the thing is that we pretty well know, or those of us that are in the industry, we
The
know
myth is they were split up, but it's still the same plant.
it's still cannabis. However, hemp has no THC.
That's the myth, but that's just the myth that they sold us.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's
Seriously?
really the most productive fiber crop and the most productive seed crop is not low THC hemp. I call the low THC hemp dwarf hemp because it produces half of the fiber and 1/20th of the seed. So what they've done with low THC dwarf hemp is they've bred out the THC. In doing that, they've bred out the flowers. And so instead of having 8,000 pounds of seeds per acre or more, you have a maximum of about 600 pounds of seeds per acre with low THC hemp. So we have this false myth out there that low THC hemp, and it's better than no hemp, but it's not as good as high THC hemp. And that's the whole reason we have marijuana prohibition. It's not about drugs, it's about fuel. It's not about drug abuse in children, it's about money and power. And so that's the thing I like to educate our viewers on, that we need to replace petroleum with hemp. And when we do, with high THC cannabis, 10% of the world's arable land that we're currently cultivating on would produce more petroleum than the whole world uses today.
Right.
And
So you're
the
saying
food byproduct and the fiber byproduct would wipe out world hunger and stop deforestation. So it's the answer to so many. And then it's not just that, it's really an issue of freedom. You know, if they can come in and say that cannabis, which is something that we all feel good about, we don't feel bad. When we quit using it, we don't have withdrawal symptoms. You know, doesn't cause accidents, doesn't cause violence. And so there's this myth out there. And it's really about the future of freedom. If we don't completely legalize hemp, then the future of freedom is grim indeed. You know, there's this technological revolution going on. The convergence of nanotechnology, genomic science, and artificial intelligence. And so right now, with the Supreme Court under the ruling of Citizens United giving corporations more rights than human beings, that is opens the dystopian door to artificial intelligence in our lifetimes in the next 30 years. It's only by allowing people to have freedom of thought and freedom of consciousness and more rights than the collective that we can guarantee freedom for future generations. So that, and hemp is the bellwether issue on which the future of freedom hinges. And it isn't just about drugs, it's really about fuel and money. And that's the message we want to get out. And I don't think it's any error on their part that the petrochemical companies are coming after us, because I've been going, and last year I was at the first cannabis conference in Japan with the First Lady of Japan, Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe's wife, Akie Abe.
And that was hosted by Time for Hemp.
It was hosted by the Japan Hemp Society, and J.L. Nair helped get it going. But there's a picture. That the lady in the center is Akie Abe. And so I was also at the first cannabis conference in Mexico and the first cannabis conference in Colombia, places that a lot of people say are very dangerous. There's Akie Abe on the stage at the Kyoto Hemp Forum.
Nice.
But it's really about freedom, and it's getting this message out. This is what I go and tell people. It's about the productivity of high THC cannabis. And that's where the future lies, if we're going to have a future.
I just learned a lot.
We are about out of time. What's your website again, Darlene?
Hempingtonpost.com.
Hempington,
Yes.
and Casper?
Timeforhemp.com. Check it out 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, live streaming all the time. Lots of archives, lots of free MP3s. Check it out. Timeforhemp.com.
Check out dpaulstanford.org. That's one out there, dpaulstanford.org. That's the end of our show tonight. Weekend Assembly is ready to take us out on another song. Thank you, folks, for coming in. Thank you, Darlene.
Very much.
Thank you, Casper.
Thank you, Casper.
Viewers. Tune in next week and help us restore hemp. John.
20 miles out in
Thank you. Weekend Assembly.